That's way, way too fast for these back roads, but it never gets old, folks. Never, ever, ever. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Electrified Outdoors. Today, we're going to be doing a long-term review on our Rivian R1S, and I've got both a male perspective and a female perspective. Now, as many of you may already know, my wife does not like to be on camera. She's a little camera shy. So I went ahead and had her write down all the things she liked and disliked about the R1S, and I'm going to go over those today as well as my thoughts to hopefully help you if you're making a decision on whether or not to buy one, or if you already have one and you just want to know what to expect out of your ownership 14 months in. Before we get started, remember to hit that like button. It helps others find our content on YouTube. So let's get started. Now you're going to see me looking back and forth at my phone. And I'll also put some images up of the stuff that I'm talking about where that's applicable. And then towards the end of this video, we'll go on a test drive and I'll kind of share with you a lot of the service issues that we've had with the vehicle as well. So I'm going to start out with my likes. I'm not really too hard of a guy to satisfy. Obviously, I love the speed. I love the power. Now, this is a first generation quad motor. It's one of the last ones produced, most likely. It rolled out of the factory the very beginning of April 2024, which is right around the time when they shut down for retooling and started producing the 2025s. So this is one of the very last 2024 examples. So just like with the R1T, the truck does it all. It's basically a sports car, an off-roader, an everyday driver. And that's one of my big likes about it, is that it pretty much does everything. And you can change the car, or the truck rather, and have it be basically whatever you want it to be. If you want to carve up back roads, or if you want comfort on a road trip, you can do that with the Rivian R1S. The other thing I like is the over-the-air software updates. The truck as you see it now, or as you're sitting in it now, is the worst it's ever going to be. Because as each over-the-air software update comes, the truck is going to get better and better with time, and they're going to add more features. Right now, Rivian's in the process of releasing an update that's going to enable something called Connect Plus, and also video from like YouTube, and it's going to allow you to cast from your iPhone or Android device onto the main display of the vehicle, which is going to be huge. That's something that we really missed coming from the Tesla world into the Rivian, is that we didn't have those media apps for example, when we're on road trips and we're stopping at a fast charger, for example. So this is going to bring the Rivian closer and closer to the experience of a Tesla. And it's one of the things that makes iPhones so great when you compare them to Androids, is because Apple updates their devices for longer. So folks are going to continue to get improvements for a longer period of time, and that's one of the main draws of it. And the value of the software updates, the free over-the-air software updates, cannot be understated. It's a tremendous value when you buy a Rivian. Driver Plus, now, if you're getting a Gen 2 vehicle, which if you're getting a new Rivian right now, that's what you're going to get. If you want to buy used, you're most likely getting a first generation. The first generation is not going to get any new features. They will get software updates to improve existing features. Now, Rivian did release the last feature update to Driver Plus for Gen 1, and that is assisted lane changing. I'll show you some video of that here, and then I'll also show you on the test drive how that works. But basically, you hit the turn signal and you change the lane manually, but when you get centered in the new lane, it automatically re-enables the auto steer and adaptive cruise. So that's good. The Gen 2 is going to have some more advanced features. It's got some newer hardware, and it's going to do automatic lane changes for one, and then there's going to be some additional features coming down the road. So if those autonomous features are really, really important to you, Gen 2 is definitely the way to go. Excellent range. So that's another one of my likes, and that's the excellent range of the Rivian products. Even the base standard pack is going to have 270 miles EPA estimated range. That's more than enough for what the majority of folks do every day. And if you need more range, you also have the large pack and the max pack, which the max pack can go up to 420 miles on a charge, which is just, it's a ton of range. So the batteries in the Rivians are top notch, and you have a lot of different options depending on your needs and what you want the price point of the vehicle to be. Another one of my likes is the drive modes, all the different drive modes that you have. Now, in the standard dual motor, you're going to only have a few drive modes, but in the quad motor, you're going to have all the drive modes. If we're talking about Gen 2, on Gen 2, it's probably going to be the tri-motor and the quad motor. We really don't know because those aren't being produced yet, but those are going to be the ones that have all the different drive modes. Performance dual motor does have the sport mode, and so on and so forth. I'll put a link down in the video description to all the different drive modes and what's available on what vehicle, and so on and so forth, for you to take a look at that. Air suspension. So that's another thing that I like. Again, this ties into the drive modes and the fact that the vehicle can do all these different things. You have different ride heights. You have 5 different ride heights. You have low, lowest, standard, high, and highest. So you have 5 different ride heights, and you have 3 different drive feel settings. You have soft. This is going to be where you get the floaty soft ride. You have moderate, which is going to combine handling with ride comfort. And then you have firm, which is going to be your sportiest setting. This is going to be when you're carving up back roads and you need the absolute best handling. You're going to have it in the firm. So a lot of different options with suspension, ride heights, and drive modes. You can pretty much do anything with this truck that you want to do. The last thing that I have on my list of likes, and this is by no means all-inclusive. I pretty much love everything about the truck. But the last major thing I have on my list of likes is the heated and ventilated seats. So in the wintertime, when it's cold, you can heat the seats up. In the summertime, when it's hot, you put the ventilation on and it keeps your back and other places from getting sweaty. So from a driver and passenger comfort standpoint, heated and ventilated seats are huge. And at this price point, I would definitely expect heated and ventilated seats. All right, so next we're going to get into my wife's list of pros. And again, my wife is camera shy, so drop her a comment down below. Maybe she'll respond, maybe she won't, but she doesn't really like to be on camera. I'll pop some video in here of the first drive of her 2023, but she's kind of camera shy, so we're going to leave it at that. So the first thing on my wife's list of pros is she likes sitting up higher than other vehicles on the road. So this is going to be in the standard ride height. She likes to have a commanding view. I suppose a lot of people like that. I kind of like it too. I didn't think I would like it when I drove sedans, which I did for many years, but I actually like it too, so I see why she likes it. She likes that commanding view of the road, and you get that with either the R1T or the R1S. The R1S has more space than most midsize SUVs, and you have the front trunk and you have the cargo area. So you have a third row, and you have, when the third row is down, you have all that cargo space back there. So you can fit a ton of stuff in the R1S, and my wife loves that it has so much room. It's not quite the amount of room that like a Chevy Tahoe would have, but it's very close. And that's one of the things my wife loves about it. And the fact that it is electric, and it's this size, and it has all this room is just huge, and all the range. My wife feels like it drives very smooth. She feels like the R1S is a very smooth driving vehicle. And this is something I would expect coming from a gas internal combustion vehicle. The electric vehicle is just an extremely smooth vehicle. It's definitely a luxury drive. You don't have all the herky-jerky of transmissions. You don't have all the noise from the engine and that kind of thing. So she definitely likes that it's a smooth operator here in the R1S. She likes the air suspension as well, so the smooth ride and the comfortable ride. She likes the towing capability. Now, the R1S is a little bit more than a lot of other mid-size SUVs, and the R1S really is bigger than a mid-size SUV. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to call it a mid-size SUV because it's not full-size. But the towing capability, 7,700 pounds of towing capability, is really, really competitive in this segment, and my wife likes the fact that she can tow that amount. We do have a travel trailer, as you may have seen in some of our other videos. So that's an important feature to my wife, is the towing capability. The kneel function. Now, we did have running boards on the 2023, and my wife has knee issues, and she didn't really like the running board. She preferred instead to use Rivian's kneel mode, which when you put the car in park, it lowers the vehicle down to a low setting, so it's easier to get in and out of the vehicle. The other benefit to that is if you have folks who have mobility issues, it's much easier for them to get into and out of the vehicle when it's in that kneel mode. So we wound up taking the running boards off, and my wife just uses the kneel mode. My wife likes the fact that the side mirrors fold in when you park. So if you're parked on the side of a road, it will fold the mirrors in. If anybody's lived in the city or worked in the city, you can get your mirror clipped and destroyed sometimes on tight roads. So if they fold in automatically to help avoid that scenario. So my wife really likes that. The backup camera with the 360-degree view, my wife loves that. Not only does it help her see all around the vehicle, obstacles all around the vehicle, but it is also very helpful. I know I use it when backing into a parking spot to get in between the lines and get centered into a parking spot. So that 360-degree camera is huge. That's something that's really missing on the Tesla vehicles that Rivian's doing a little bit better than they are. My wife also likes it for team sports, the amount of people that she can fit in here. Our daughter does sports, and there's been many times where her friends and sometimes their parents will all pile into the R1S. They love it. My wife loves the fact that she can do that. And that's a huge feature for her. And I'm sure a lot of other families, if you have a large family, you can easily fit 2 car seats back there, or fit one in the third row. So lots and lots of people hauling capability. So moving on, in case you couldn't tell, my wife does not like a lot of attention. She's camera shy. And when she first got the R1S a little over a year ago, she was getting a lot of questions from people. People were stopping her and stuff like that. And she felt like it was a little bit of a safety issue. So one of the things she likes is the color, the El Cap Granite. She feels like she blends in a little bit more. It's not so much of a, hey, look at me color. And I kind of like it too for that reason, but I love my limestone R1T a little bit more. But this is my wife's car, and she likes the El Cap Granite color. My wife also likes the fact that it's much faster, much quicker than any of the competition. You're not going to find any other midsize SUV that's going to do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds or close to that. So she loves that. If she steps on the accelerator, she goes. And my wife really likes that as well. My wife doesn't drive fast a lot, but she likes the fact that the power is there if she needs to use it. My wife really likes the proximity locking. So a lot of people have complained about the proximity locking and the fact that if you're standing close to the vehicle, it kind of gets confused and locks and unlocks. But my wife loves it. She doesn't have to worry about locking the car. Did she lock the car? She walks away and it locks. The other nice thing is in the app, you can also check. So if you, for some reason, feel like you might not have locked the car, you just open up the app. Maybe you're in the office or in the house or in bed, and you open up the app and you can see whether it's locked or not. So my wife really likes that function as well, the proximity locking. And another thing my wife likes is she feels that it's a great everyday car. It also is good. We live in kind of a rural area, so she feels like it's really a good car for a rural area where you may have difficult roads or when the weather gets bad, when you get snow. It gives her a little more confidence when she needs to go out. So my wife really likes it for that, and she thinks it's a great everyday car. We're getting close to the end of my wife's pros. There's a lot of them, and so I guess she really likes the R1S. She loves the third row seats, and for hauling sports teams or hauling people around, or just having the capability, like most of the time we have the third row down, we use it for cargo, but having the capability to put those seats up and transport a couple more people is great. And my wife really likes having that capability. The last thing on my wife's pros list is the pet friendliness of the Rivian vehicle. Now, again, with the Neo mode, whether you're putting your pet in the cargo area or you're putting your pet in the back seat with a pet cover, I do have another video showing the pet cover in the R1S. I'll link to that down below. Now, we typically put the dogs in the back seat and we put the pet cover on there. They can jump in. We don't have to worry about mud, hair, nothing. We put them in. When they're done, we take the cover out and it's gone. In the back, if you put them in the cargo area, you kind of have to get a different kind of cover for that area, and it's a little more difficult to clean up. But either way, with the Neo mode, even if you have older dogs, very easy for them to get in and out of the R1S. So it's a very pet-friendly vehicle as well. Next, we're going to get into the things we don't like so much and we feel like Rivian could do a little bit better. So just like we did with the pros, we're going to start off with my cons first, and then we'll move into my wife's cons. The number one thing on the list here, folks, is still, unfortunately, service. I know Rivian's trying really hard, and I'm not knocking any of the folks at the service centers. Every interaction I've had with them, every person at the Rivian service centers has been completely awesome. The issue is more with Rivian corporate, in that there's not a lot of service centers, and so the service centers that do exist are either far away or overwhelmed or both. The result of this is it takes a long time to get to the service center for owners that need service, and the second and probably the most important part of it is it takes a long time to get an appointment. Now, Rivian does prioritize vehicles that have safety issues or are not drivable. However, it's very frustrating when you have an issue with your new car. If you have to wait a month or 2 months to get that service appointment, it's very frustrating. So for those folks that are not able to be patient with service requests, I would recommend that you hold off on your purchase at this time. Rivian is working very hard to improve this, but until they do, it may not be a good choice for you if you can't be patient with service. So this is a nitpicky thing that I also complained about with the R1T, and that's the lack of a heated seat for the middle seating position in the second row. I feel like at this price point, these vehicles should have a heated middle seat as well, but only the 2 side seats are heated in the second row. Now, Rivian does say there's going to be a software update that enables tri-zone climate control. And in that software update, you will be able to have driver and passenger temperatures, and the second row will be able to set their temperature. So I think that'll be a very welcome addition. And it's something that really is expected at this price point, I think. The next thing on the list, also I had this complaint with the R1T, and that's the lack of a 12-volt accessory port in the passenger compartment. Now, here in the R1S, you have one all the way back in the cargo area, which is great. But if you're towing and you have like a trailer backup camera, you have nothing in the front to plug into. And I actually will put a link in the video description. I have an OBD2 to 12 volt accessory outlet that you can use to get 12 volt power here in the front. But Rivian originally had up under the main display a 12 volt accessory port. And as part of their cost cutting, they actually removed that. And I think that's a huge omission. They need to bring that 12 volt accessory port back and have at least one of those in the front of the vehicle for things like backup cameras for trailers and things of that nature. The last of my cons is road noise. Now, it seems like it's kind of hit or miss, and I did another video. There's a little area here in the triangle window which you can put some gasket in there, and that'll reduce a lot of it. This one is better than the 2023 my wife had, but it still seems like it has a lot more wind noise than a vehicle at this price point should. I'm being told that the Generation 2 is a lot better in this regard. Now, I will be doing a review of the Gen 2 R1S coming soon, so make sure you subscribe and then hit that notification bell so you get notified when that video comes out. But nonetheless, I think the road noise and the NVH, the AC, for example, that all needs to be better for a vehicle at this price point. Now we're going to get into my wife's list of cons. And my wife did have I'm going to combine two things into one, and that's some glitches that she had. Now, I will say that these glitches were resolved by making my wife's Rivian account the primary owner account. Initially, both the R1T and the R1S were under my account as the owner, and my wife is a second driver. And since that was done, these issues seem to have gone away. But it's still an issue because if you have a secondary driver, it's kind of annoying. The first one was that the driver's mirror would not remember its setting. Now, Rivian tried to update the firmware. That did not fix the issue. So the result of that was every time my wife would get into the vehicle, which twice a day if she was commuting to and from the office at least, she would have to reset the position of the driver's side mirror. Very, very annoying, and in some cases could be unsafe. The other thing she had is some strange key card unlocking behavior. So sometimes it would unlock and then immediately lock again, or it would unlock, and even though we don't have that setting set, it would only unlock the driver's door. So some of the handles presented and some of them didn't, that kind of thing. So just some glitchy kind of behavior with the key card and the mirrors. But again, that was resolved by making my wife the primary owner of the vehicle on her Rivian account. The next thing that my wife really doesn't like, and I kind of agree with her, is the lack of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. We've beat this to death. Everybody else out there in the Rivian community has beat this to death. Rivian is aware of it, and they really seem to have no plan to introduce it anytime soon, which I think is not good. I think at least giving folks the option to use Android Auto or Apple CarPlay is something that Rivian should do, and it would differentiate them from the competition as well. But nonetheless, if you want Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, not going to get it in the Rivian, maybe never. So just be aware of that. Now, the next thing on my wife's list is the difficulty in accessing the third row and resetting the position of the second row seats. Now, I'll show you some video of this as well, but the second row seats are not powered. And so anytime you access the third row, you need to manually put them back into position, and then you need to manually put the seat backs back into position. And the seats are heavy. Now, for me, I'm not the weakest guy in the world, but they're still heavy to me. I can't imagine that my wife or anyone else really likes the fact that they really need a lot of muscle to get those seats back into place, and they need to do that every time they access the third row. Now, for us, it's not that much of an issue because we only use the third row on occasion. If you have a large family and you're going to be using the third row daily or regularly, this may be an issue for you. And I think, again, at this price point, Rivian really should have a power second row seat that puts itself back into the position that it was in after the third row is accessed. But that gets old really quick if you have to do that every day, unless you're like me and you eat your Wheaties. The next thing on my wife's list was she expects an automatic rear wiper as well at this price point. So I think the way Rivian could do that is by tying the rear wiper in with the automatic front wiper function. I don't think they need a separate sensor, but my wife really expects not to have to manually turn on that rear wiper, or at least when she turns it on to have it go into an auto setting. Currently, for the rear wiper, you either have an intermittent or a full on setting in the Rivian software. So maybe Rivian can do something with that in the future, but she did expect to have an automatic rear wiper. The next thing on the list is my wife feels the turn signal sound is a little bit too low. I know Rivian has released a software update to improve that, but she still thinks it's kind of too low, and she expects, coming from her ICE vehicles, for the sound to be a little bit louder, letting her know that the turn signal is on. Next thing on my wife's list of cons is the seat comfort. Now, it's not horrible, but she expects them to be a little bit more comfortable. Again, this is more of a luxury vehicle, higher price point. But the other thing I did explain to her is that this is a very fast, sporty vehicle too. So it's kind of a balance where if it's too soft, you're going to slide all around when you're driving the vehicle in a spirited manner. So I think that's why Rivian made the seats a little firmer. But still, my wife wants them a little bit softer. The next thing, and I've seen a lot of people complain about this online, and that's the roof. My wife's scalp actually gets sunburned a little bit from the roof. And the only two options to mitigate that are aftermarket sunshades, which my wife feels don't really fit in with the luxury feel of the vehicle, or tint. Now, the concern with tinting the panoramic roof is the Rivian glass is very sensitive, both the windshield and the roof. You can see a lot of folks complaining about cracks, or they leaned on the edge and it cracked a little bit for the roof. And so the concern is when you tint that and you get the heat buildup, because the tint is going to reject the heat buildup in the roof could potentially crack the roof. So we didn't opt to do that, but my wife really doesn't like that sun coming through. Now, the second generation R1S does have a dynamic roof option, but from the things I've read online, it really doesn't block out the heat that well. So you're still going to be looking at either tinting or putting a sunshade in there. Now, Rivian could have an automatic retracting sunshade in there as an option. That would really, I think, make everyone happy. Definitely would make my wife happy. So the next thing on the list is kind of subjective. My wife thinks yellow is a fun color, but she doesn't think it fits in with the luxury feel of the vehicle. Now, if you have the quad motor first generation or the tri-motor Gen 2, those are going to have the yellow accents. And my wife feels like that doesn't necessarily fit in with the luxury feel of the car. Now, the dual motor vehicles do have more subtle. So they have black on the logos, and then the brake calipers are silver instead of yellow. So Rivian somewhat addressed that. The only way you would get it on a Gen 2 is the tri-motor, but my wife doesn't like the yellow so much. The next thing, and this is huge, I also feel the same way on this, and that's the lack of cup holders. Now, yes, in the R1S you have 6 cup holders. You have 2 in the front, 2 in the second row, and then 2 in the third row. However, there have been a lot of instances where we felt like we could use an extra cup holder, either in the first row or in the second row. So I think that if Rivian could add some more cup holders in the future, that would be really, really nice. The next thing my wife has trouble with is seeing small print on the main display at night. So what she would like is if Rivian could either magnify the screen somewhat or make a high contrast theme, maybe for folks who have vision issues, to be able to see what's on the screen a little bit easier. But she seems to only have the problem at night. That's the only time she's really having an issue with it. Now, the next issue has to do with towing, and it was a pro that the Rivian has a lot of towing capacity, but it's also a con because, and it's not a Rivian issue, this is an EV issue, okay? It's a con that the range is severely impacted when you're towing. It does depend on what you're towing, but we tow a travel trailer, and that's a worst case scenario. It's a box on wheels, and when we tow that, it drops the range by as much as a third. So we're looking at maybe a 100 miles in between charging stops. Totally not an issue. If you're driving 200 or 300 miles, no problem. But if you're driving 600 miles, 700, 800 miles, it gets old really fast having to stop every 100 miles, and it adds a lot of time to your trip. So if that's an issue for you and you do a lot of towing, it may be a problem. Now, the Max Pack helps with that somewhat. This has a large pack, but it's still not going to be that much more range when you're towing. But again, this is not a Rivian problem. This is an EV problem. It happens with any EV. F-150 Lightning, Tesla Cybertruck, doesn't matter. Not a Rivian problem, but still it's something my wife put on her list. The next thing is the wireless charger. Now, this complaint's been beat to death. The Gen 2 R1S does have a divider on there, but it doesn't stop the phone from moving forward or backwards. So you still run into the issue where when you're driving the vehicle, the phone moves and then it stops charging. All of a sudden you get to your destination and you're expecting your phone to be charged and it's almost dead. So it's very frustrating. Vehicle in this price point, again, should have a very good wireless charger. Hopefully Rivian can further improve upon that in the future. Now we're getting to the end of the list here, but one of the last two items is the depreciation issue. This has become an issue, I would say, within the last 6 to 8 months. We've seen a lot of depreciation, not just with Rivian, across the board with electric vehicles. The R1S is actually depreciated a lot less than many of the other EVs. But still, it's a big concern for my wife, and I'm sure a concern for a lot of EV buyers. If that's a concern, if you get a new car, usually every 2 to 3 years, I would highly recommend that you lease instead. That might be a better option and will make depreciation not as much of a factor. The last item on the cons list, and we'll talk more about this towards the end of the video when I talk about the service issues, is the issue my wife had with her 2023 R1S, which is why we have this 2024. She had some service issues. It did take a while to get it resolved. Rivian did replace the vehicle at no charge to us, which was phenomenal. But it was still a little bit of a frustrating, anxiety-provoking experience for my wife. And so she did add it to her cons list. And again, we'll get into that more towards the end of the video. But that's going to be it for the pros and cons. Next, we're going to go ahead and take a test drive, and we'll just talk and wrap up the video.
Now, we don't have a ton of accessories on the vehicle, but I am going to go over some of the accessories my wife has. We have door sill PPF protection. This is from T-Wraps. Links to all this stuff will be in the video description and on the website. But this is nice and clear. It is the 10 mil protection, so it's as thick as possible. It'll protect this area from chips, scratches, scuffs, all that fun stuff. And if the PPF gets damaged, you can remove it and put a new PPF strip on there. Now, as we take a look at the exterior of the vehicle here, she does have the T-Wraps mud flaps installed. And the rear mud flaps will protect this area in the back. It'll protect that sensor back there from becoming obstructed. But the big protection comes here in the front. So the mud flap in the front will protect this area of the vehicle. And she does not have PPF on this area. Rivian does put PPF right here from the factory, but it doesn't protect any of this other part of the vehicle. And so these mud flaps will protect any rocks and mud that are being thrown up by the tires from hitting the side of the vehicle here and doing damage to the paint. Now, she did opt for the front PPF protection installed at the factory. If you look very, very closely, you can see that there's lines there, but for the price, I think the job that they did is awesome. They did wrap the edges here on the hood, and you can also see that the side mirrors are also protected with PPF as part of this package. And you'll see this with every Rivian R1T and R1S. There is a line there. They cannot use one piece to PPF these side mirrors. So you will see a line that is two pieces, but it's barely visible, and it does protect the side mirrors. Now, I also installed a tow hook license plate mount there on the front, so we don't have to drill the front bumper. I just couldn't bring myself to drill holes in that bumper. And the nice thing about that is if you're off-roading, or if you're showing it, or if you're washing it, you can easily remove it. It utilizes the OE license plate bracket for the front. As we go into the rear, my wife does have a few things in the back here, but as we pull this down, you can see that we have a WeatherTech mat back here. And we have the Rivian all-weather mats in the first, second, and third rows, but here we have the WeatherTech mat. And the thing I like about this one is it has this piece that we can pull down over the little half tailgate there. And if we're sliding stuff in and out, it protects that. And then when we're done with it, we just simply roll this back up, and it has a Velcro strip there that holds it into place. And yeah, great accessory there. The license plate frame, we actually used a silicone license plate frame cover, and this is going to protect the paint underneath from getting scratched up by the license plate. And it also comes with these nice covers. They cover up the screw holes to give a nice luxury quality look. Another thing we did here is we tinted the two front windows. We did a visor strip across the top of the windshield. Not sure if you can see that. That helps with the sun in the eyes issue. But we also did the front windows with the XPEL Ultimate, and you can see they also matched the rears. It is a 20%, so it may or may not be legal to check your state tinting laws, but it does match very well with the rear windows and gives it a nice quality OE look, and it also keeps the interior of the vehicle a little bit cooler. Now if we come around here to the front of the vehicle, I have not done anything with the frunk as of yet, but if we look in here, we can see that we have all this space, 11 cubic feet. Gen 2 will be slightly smaller. You have this mobile charger down here, and you do have a plug, drain plug down there in the bottom. Now, one complaint I do have about the frunk is a lot of folks say that you can use it to store drinks or as a cooler. The problem is it gets very hot in here in the summertime because I don't know if you can hear that fan noise in there, but right underneath of there is the condenser for the air conditioning unit, and the air is actually blown out of the condenser on both sides. And if you look up in the wheel well here, I'm not sure if you can see that. If you look up in the wheel well there, you can see those vents, and they're on both sides, and that's where the air from your condenser blows out. So it blows around the front tub and out the wheel wells here, which is fine. But what it does is it makes the frunk extremely hot. And on a recent road trip, we actually had some vitamins in here. I take a fish oil supplement, and they melted on the road trip. It was so hot inside this frunk. So anything that you store up here, be mindful that if it's sensitive to heat, you do not want to store it up here. However, as far as accessories, in my R1T, I do have a mat in here to protect this. I will have a link to that down in the video description as well. But it is good to have the option of being able to store all that stuff in here. It does make it easier on road trips. You just need to be mindful of the amount of heat that gets generated in here in the summertime. We also have the Rivian all-weather mats, which give it a nice OE look. And you can see that they do trap some of the water and dirt. There are other aftermarket options that provide a little bit more coverage, but I like the fact that these give it an original equipment look, and they are functional as well. Now, as we step in here, you can also see that we have this every amp phone mount here. Now, we actually have the one that has an extended arm, and this is a MagSafe magnetic ring, but they also have one that does not have this extended arm. And in that case, the 17mm ball will be right about here next to the screen. And so this makes it very convenient to mount the phone. So like if you're using Waze or something like that, you can easily see it kind of in between both your driver's display and your main display. And like we always do, we're gonna drive through the beautiful back roads of Mount Airy, Maryland here. And one of the things with the R1S that's different from the R1T is the way it responds to steering input. The ride is also a little bit different as well. My wife feels totally different about this. She feels like the ride is better in the R1S. I feel like the ride is a bit better in the R1T. It is a longer vehicle. It's about 18 inches longer than the R1S, but my wife feels like the R1S rides better than the R1T. I do feel like it's more responsive, so the R1S feels sportier than the R1T, but I still love my R1T. Now, one thing I will tell you on the highway, big difference on the highway between the two vehicles is the handling. So the R1S feels sportier when you're driving around back roads,
But on the highway, if you're in the standard ride height, the R1S feels very top heavy. So I feel like really uneasy sometimes when I'm going around turns in the R1S on the highway at high speeds, where I don't feel as uneasy with the R1T. So just something to note. But it's still a very, very comfortable vehicle in the standard ride height with either soft or moderate suspension feel. The R1S is just a beautiful vehicle to drive. The acceleration is second to none. Now, one thing I will tell you, and a lot of folks have mentioned with the R1S and the R1T both, is they're not like Teslas. So with a Tesla, you have a lot of highway top end power with the long range Model Y, for example. When you're doing 60 or 65 and you step on that accelerator, it takes off. The Model Y Performance, though, doesn't have as much top-end power either. It's got a lot of low-end 0 to 60 power. And that's the way the Rivian is. Another thing people complain about with the Rivian, both the R1T and the R1S, is that the accelerator feels heavy. And it does. But I would say it's closer to what a truck would be. See, a lot of people are coming from other vehicles that are not trucks, and the heavy accelerator, the additional accelerator pedal travel are all things that you would expect in a truck versus a car or a crossover. The one thing I will tell you is when you're at a stop and you're taking off, the 0 to 60 will glue you to the seat. And this is a quad motor Gen 1. It'll glue you to the seat. 835 horsepower, 908 pound-feet of torque. Even the base dual motor is 533 horsepower and about 633 pound-feet of torque. It's just a tremendous amount of power. And if you really want to get crazy, the new second generation R1S and R1T, the tri-motor, 850 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds. And then the quad motor, the new quad motor, is just completely over the top. You're talking about 1,025 horsepower, 1,200 and some odd pound-feet of torque, and 0 to 60 in about 2.5 seconds. But I think for the majority of people, the dual motor or dual motor performance are going to fit the bill really nice here in the R1S. So next, let's get on the highway and I'll show you a little bit of how the Driver Plus works here in the Gen 1. It'll be similar in the Gen 2, but the Gen 2 will have more features coming in the future. Okay, everyone, so we're getting on the highway here. I'm just going to do a little bit of a demonstration. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday, so it's probably going to be quite a bit of traffic out here on the road. Now, you definitely don't want to be using the Driver Plus in the right lane. It does not do good with merging traffic. You're going to get other drivers really angry at you. So I highly recommend, if you're going to use it, the best place to be is in the center lane. So I'm going to try to get over here. And we're at a 70-mile-an-hour speed limit. I'm going to set it in here at 74 just to keep the other cars from running me off the road. And I'm going to double tap down. Now in Gen 2, it's a little bit different. I think you push it or pull it. But I'm going to double tap down to engage the system. And I can increase the following distance by pushing up or down on this scroll wheel. Obviously down will decrease the following distance, up will increase it. The minimum seems to be like 3 or 4 car lengths. So this system does not do very well with curvy roads. So I'll show you here. it's going to get, yeah, it gets really close to the line over there. But I just want to demonstrate the lane changing function, which I'll do once we get back on a straight stretch. I don't want to obstruct traffic at all. So let me go ahead and re-enable the system. And I'm going to set the minimum follow distance. I'm also going to increase my speed to 70. And then I'm going to try to move, after I pass this car, I'm going to try to move into the right lane. This big rig behind me is not very happy. And you'll see it turns into an arrow, and then it should re-enable itself. Yes, there it did, when I get back into the lane. Now after this truck passes, I'll try to get back over. Now this is a dump truck up here, so I'm actually going to increase my follow distance because I don't know if he's got rocks or anything in there, and I don't want to get in trouble with my wife for getting hit with rocks. Now, one of the things I can do if I want to get over and I want to go faster is I can increase the speed. It'll still maintain the distance between me and the car in front regardless. But what this will do is when I do my lane change, it will automatically pick up speed. It'll also automatically do it when someone moves out of the way. It's going to be an awful lot of traffic here for me to do the lane change. And we can see there's a lane merge ahead. But you get the point, folks. Let me see if I can get over here now. We'll try it again. All right, there we go. But you get the point, folks. It's not as good as Tesla by any means, but it's good enough, I think, for what most people are going to use it for. And a lot of folks may not even want something as advanced as what Tesla offers. So I think in both of those cases, the Rivian system is perfectly fine.
Now another issue is the hatch. Now it's going to open this time, but it doesn't always do that. Sometimes when we release it, it has to be manually pulled up. And as you can see, we're not on a slope. If you were sloped with the front of the vehicle down, facing downhill, it is normal for it not to open because it won't open if there's any resistance. But we're not on a slope and it should open by itself. It is intermittent, and we haven't scheduled any service because going through the effort of dropping it off at service and then just having them not be able to duplicate it is something we're not willing to do at this point, and it doesn't happen often enough to be too much of a problem. But if I press this button, as you can see, there's a lot of cargo space back there, by the way.
Okay, everyone, so I don't know if I got the last hard acceleration on camera. It seems like anytime I accelerate hard, one of my cameras malfunctions. It happened with the R1T and it's happening with the R1S. But anyway, there's a lot of traffic out on the main road, so I don't want to try to do a 0 to 60 out there or a hard acceleration just because I want to be as safe as possible. But we'll see if we can find a spot on these back roads where I can really lay into it. Now, in order to get the most power out of the R1S, you're going to need to pop it into sport mode. So you go into your drive mode setting here, you tap sport mode, and that'll put you in the low ride height and the firm ride feel setting. And it'll also make the maximum amount of power available to the truck when you need it or when you ask for it. Now, where we're finding a spot here, the Rivian adjusts the amount of power available based on your ride height. So if you have it in the standard ride height or the high ride height, you're not going to get anywhere near the maximum power because it doesn't want to overload the axles when they're at a higher ride height. So if you're in a standard ride height and you mash the accelerator, don't expect to get neck braking acceleration. You'll still get really, really good acceleration, but you're not going to get the maximum. Now I have a feeling this guy is going to turn. He is. So I'm not going to go where he's going. I'm going to go straight back here. All right, this seems like a good spot. So I'm just going to slow down here. And that's way, way too fast for these back roads, but it never gets old, folks. Never, ever, ever. And I love the sound of it. And that's not enough to convince you that the R1S is an awesome vehicle. I don't know what is. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and put them down below. We always love to hear from you down there. Remember to like, subscribe, and then hit that bell so you get notified anytime we add new content. And thank you guys so much for watching.